Hello, welcome to Cable's Conquests. I'm your host, Archie Cable, and we're here to talk about Marvel Crisis Protocol.
The name's Cable. Remember it.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Cable's Conquests. I'm your host Archie Cable, and I'm joined for a very exciting episode by our captain, Curtis Hodgson. Curtis, how are you doing?
Hi Archie, I am very excited. Just as we record this, we are less than 2 weeks away from the WTC. Lists have been locked. We've now got a little bit of insight into what our opponents will be playing. You know, when we're ready to jump on those planes and head over to Copenhagen. How are you feeling about it all?
Oh, I'm absolutely buzzing. I went last year and it was a great event, and we've got the Second Breakfast Club back together. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the event?
Sure thing. So, well, this is my first time at the WTC, or the World Team Championships. The World Team Championships, it's a team event for the Marvel Crisis Protocol, where teams of 5 players will compete against each other. Within those teams, there can be no duplicate characters. So across 5 rosters, you are going to have 50 unique character cards. Obviously, you could have the same aliases, but it can't be the same character. This year they have allowed, I don't know if in previous years they've had the same flexibility, but this year they have allowed for crossover on Crisis and on Tactics cards as well, which I think, given the current state of Tactics cards, is probably for the best. You know, most of the Tactics cards that people are using are either the restricted ones, the character cards, or affiliated cards. There's very, very few in terms of standard generic cards that anyone can use. So they're a bit few and far between. So I'm very, very welcoming that.
Yeah, for that restriction, it's basically the restricted that's the problem.
Yes.
You've got character specific and affiliation specific, and in this team kind of format, there's unlikely to be a crossover in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with only so many restricted cards in the game, and you know, as we'll go on to, like, cards like Brace for Impact is just it's so universal. The teams that don't have it really do feel like they're punished. So yeah, no, I welcome the unrestricted Team Tactics cards, and I also welcome the unrestricted Crises. I think it's enough of a puzzle for the teams to try and put together 5 unique teams in terms of characters, because you know, characters are ultimately the primary cards within the game, the primary resources that we use, and they will largely dictate your play style. But it gives teams flexibilities. They can have 5 really aggressive teams that all want sort of similar crises. They can have 5, you know, sort of crisis orientated teams, or they can have a mix. Whereas when you're sort of sharing crises and you sort of get locked into certain archetypes, which is a bit of a shame. What are your thoughts on those restrictions?
Yeah, I like this restriction. I've played that. So last year's WTC was the same as this. Obviously, we had you went to Nations recently, where they do the full Highlander format, and I think, having done both, I think this is preferable because, as you say, there is enough of a puzzle to piece together with characters that actually you severely weaken rosters if you restrict tactics cards and crises. And I think actually, specifically with crises, is that the current setup, there's enough variety in terms of what people like to play that you're not going to see that much of a repetition, I don't think. I know Across the Bifrost have done a really good review show of all the kind of stats relating to WTC in the lead up. I listened to that the other day, and actually what you see is that the most popular crises are still not taken that often, even though all the players have access to them.
I listened to the same episode, and they essentially demonstrated that the most popular crises are still only really taken by less than half of players. So you've got a really good balance across the crises.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, it's a team event, so there's a team of 5, so we'll be assembling a team. And actually, that is the purpose of this episode, isn't it? We're doing a preview show, and what we're going to do is we're going to do something a little unusual. We're going to hear from all 5 of our team members, and they're going to discuss a little bit about their rosters that they're bringing. So So for those of you who want a bit of a competitive edge against our team, our highly competitive team, then maybe this is the episode to listen to.
And it's a really special event, isn't it? Because, we will go to events up and down this country. A lot of the regular players become quite familiar. Their play style and the teams that they use all become quite familiar, and you're battling against them, and I suppose practicing against them as well. But when you go somewhere like the WTC, there's another rule in it, in that until the final round, until the sort of championship rounds, your team cannot play another team from the same nation. So we will inevitably be playing players that we've probably never played before, players from different metas, from different countries, a different perspective on the game. I don't think many of us in our team, the team that we've assembled are big TTS players. So for a lot of us, this is going to be the first time sort of getting a window into other metas. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love this. I loved this about it last year. I played for Team Denmark last year, so I was not avoiding actually the Team England teams, which is who. But we actually ended up avoiding them. But what was really cool is you see different opinions on what is strong, and as it turns out, lots of different characters work. And I played against lots of different teams last year that were constructed in a way that I wouldn't have done. For example, I played against the Professor X list when I've been hearing all about your Professor X list, and he played it very differently, and it was just as effective and just as interesting to play against. And that's really cool, and it makes you, I think after the event, it inspires you to think a bit more outside the box, and it certainly does for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's something that I've not played many international players. So for me, this is really interesting. And one of my, most valuable sort of the characteristics of this game is to see as much variety as possible. And in the team format, you get, especially at the WTC, we're getting two layers of that. We're getting the first layer being in team construction and roster construction, and then the second, obviously, different people's ideas. I mean, listening to that episode from Across the Bifrost, and a shout out for them. I went in and I had a look at some of the rosters that people have made, and it's interesting. We see 24 Servants of Apocalypse rosters, and in my view, I would expect those 24 Servants of Apocalypse rosters to look identical. Well, the first four I look at were completely, well, maybe not completely different, but they had significant differences. Their 8th, 9th, 10 characters were not consistent. Some had splashed characters, and that's not something which I suppose people feel is solved in terms of how you build it, but clearly not. Clearly, people have different ideas, and that's really, really exciting to see.
And also, I guess the variety also comes from the pairing process. We won't go into details on the pairing process, but you essentially will be facing 5 other players, and you'll be paired off against one of them. And I guess a lot of homework can go into how you do the pairing process, and I know our team are doing that at the moment. But actually, because there is some uncertainty in the pairing process, you might end up playing against different rosters that you wouldn't necessarily want to play against or expect to play against. And I think that makes it quite exciting. You'll hopefully have quite a good variety of opponents as well in terms of what they're playing, despite the fact that there are, I guess, the teams are dominated by having an Apocalypse player and a Inhumans player in particular.
Absolutely. Well, that's the event, and sort of that's what we're coming into. Is it worth us briefly going into sort of the second Breakfast Club and the history of our team and how we've assembled it?
Yeah, I think so. Just one more thing about the event that I think is really cool is it's unique to my mind in the sense that it is purely in one place. So you stay in a hotel right by Copenhagen airport, and so all of your meals are in there. So not only do you get to play this awesome event, but you also have a lot of time for socializing, playing more games. I think I'm going to take a second roster out with me so that I can have a break from my WTC list and play some casual games. I think that's a really good selling point of the event, is that you're there for MCP and there's no distractions.
Absolutely. No, that's something I really, really love about large events that do this. I like it when it's all in one place. You feel like you can sort of turn off the rest of the world and just focus on this sort of shared hobby, shared interest that you've got with a lot of people, and just have loads of fun. It's really, really great, and like you say, it feels straightforward, and that everything is sorted for you once you're there. Once you're there, you just need to worry about rolling dice.
Yeah, exactly. The only thing you have to buy is the beer. So we'll take that. But yes, let's go into the Second Breakfast Club, Curtis. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the history? Because this has been a long time coming.
It really, really has. This is, I would say, it's over 12 months old now. It's sort of in its inception. We are a group of players who have perhaps a similar viewpoint or way to view the game in terms of what we want to get out of it. But ultimately, the core of our group met playing Middle Earth, the Middle Earth strategy battle game,
Yeah.
hence Second Breakfast Club. And I think it was about this time last year with the WTC coming up, and I know yourself, you were going, and you think you were quite a last minute join. Another one of our team members was a last minute join, and the other two, and everyone was sort of playing sort of bits of other teams, and didn't necessarily have that sort of team identity. We had started sort of socializing. Obviously, we knew each other beforehand. You know, Harry, who we'll go on to, we've known through Middle Earth.
Yep, he's still saved in my phone as Harry MESBG.
There we go. Yeah. Ollie is a friend of Harry. Oliver actually introduced Harry to MCP, so to create that bridge between the two games. And Dave similarly is someone who we've sort of gotten close with. He's come to a lot of London events and sort of started to mix with our group. We've invited him. We've sort of played in more casual team events with him. So this sort of team idea has been brewing from the sense that, you know, we've all got this similar perspective on the game. And that is, we want to play our best. When we get to the table, we all want to win. But the way we win, we don't necessarily want to be doing it the tried and tested way, the sort of quote unquote meta way. We sort of want to do it our way. You know, we like seeing certain characters on the table. We like telling certain stories on the table, but at the same time, we also do like winning. Have I summed it up okay there? How would you see us?
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. I think hopefully the listener will hear as we go on and we explain our rosters that they're not necessarily the picks that are the meta. For example, spoilers, Apocalypse and Inhumans are not in any of our lists. We don't have any of those, and I think there are only 4 teams in total that have that.
Yeah.
So yeah, we kind of pride ourselves on being innovative, and maybe sometimes to our detriment. But as you say, when we get to the table, we're there to win. But yeah, we like to play our favorite characters.
Yeah. I mean, long-time listeners will know that it quite often is to our detriment. But one thing. I mean, we love this episode. Essentially, is just going to be 5 versions of our roster building section. And actually, when we sit down and record these podcasts, it's one of our favorite sections because it's where we get to express that creativity, express that innovation, maybe challenge each other to think differently about how characters interact and different strategies work. So I'm quite excited to hear what everyone's got to say about their rosters.
Yeah, and actually that works even better, I think, in a team format because you can't just choose the best things. You can't just all take Shang-Chi. You can't just all take Baron Zemo. You have to be innovative because only one person gets those characters, and I think that allows us to express even more. So yeah, why not we hold fire there and let's hear from the rest of our teammates. Let them introduce themselves, and then we'll hear from the 2 of us in our roster building sections.
Brilliant.
You're boring me. If you want to help me nail him, get your team together and let's get started.
Hi, I'm Harry. I'm playing X-Force, and I'm the Omega level threat of the Second Breakfast Club.
Hi, Harry. Welcome to Cable's Conquest, or should I say welcome back. You're becoming a bit of a regular, which is good to see. X-Force for the Second Breakfast Club. Why don't you run us through your roster?
Yep, so the 10 characters that make up my list, starting with obviously Cable. Then we have Deadpool, Domino, X-23, The Mighty Thor, Black Panther, Bishop, Spider-Man, Nick Fury, and Honey Badger. It's Nick Fury Jr., sorry.
Very nice.
So for tactics cards, we have Brace, Cat and Mouse, Instant Recovery, Preserve the Dream, Recal, Sacrifice, Warpath, Eye in the Sky, Pretty Sneaky Sis, and Survival. And then for Crisis, we have Deadly Meteors Mutate Civilians, Emcran Crystal, Wedding Party, Hammers, Deadly Legacy Virus, and Alien Ship Crashes in Downtown.
Nice. So I think X-Force game style, very gunline. That's what you're bringing to the Second Breakfast Club. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the core of your roster?
Yeah, so the characters that normally see the table every time, obviously Cable, but also I would say Domino and X23 and probably Miles now as well are pretty much the pieces that I am always turning to. Domino and X23 because they can be quite survivable, and also X23 especially. If she does get dazed, she can wake up a bunch of power and then kind of get me back in the game after maybe going down a couple of extracts or whatever, because yeah, with X-Force, you can apply some early pressure, you inevitably get some clapback, and then hopefully your pieces will be waking up with loads of power to kind of take your score to 16 and seal the game.
Yeah, I guess you have a lot of threat to the midline early, and I guess that's reflected in your crises, with the combination of Cable and Cat and Mouse. Whereas X23, I guess, doesn't do that so much early, but it's the late game that you're looking for.
Yeah, it's definitely X23. You're looking often to try and not spend a power with her in round one so that round two she can have her spender online. Or you're hoping that through some of your movement shenanigans like Preserve the Dream, you can get her into range of her builder of someone. And essentially, the way I view it is that you want your opponent to look at the board and think, oh crap, if I go with this model, they're going to get dazed. And if I go with the other model, that other model will get dazed. So you're trying to set up these different points where they feel like they're limited for solutions. So I often will have Domino and Cable on other sides of the board so that both of them are projecting kind of their threat there. After that, just kind of stealing the extracts and kind of using the movement that you have to run around a little bit. Flip Hater flips and hopefully score out before they get too angry and hurt you back.
Yeah, so you mentioned stealing extracts, and I think something, I know you've been on the podcast before talking about X-Force. This has been a long-term project. What I don't think you talked too much about last time was Miles. So stealing extracts, is that what he's there for?
Yeah, so Miles is definitely, I mean, one, he's a really versatile option because he has great movement. He also does pack a bit of a punch. He's got displacement, but crucially, it is the auto drop on the objectives where sometimes you're having a game where your attrition just isn't doing the business into Hulk or your Abomination or characters like that, or Apocalypse is obviously a great example. And also your opponent can sometimes position or displace you that suddenly your attrition just isn't going to be possible. So having a character who, with some power generation, can have that turn of, cool, drop all your objectives, I steal them, and then I run away, is really crucial. Unlike someone like Black Cat, he can still do the other parts of my plan really well. Yeah, ultimately, he's won me quite a few games.
Yeah, and the reroll with the web swing, the 6 dice builder suddenly makes it 7 dice, which for a little 3 threat.
Yeah, it's another thing they then have to try and brace potentially, and then that burns it so that Cable can chuck a big piece of terrain. So a lot of it is kind of focusing on your strengths of movement and also throw capability and damage, and thinking, okay, who can add to that as well as give me a little bit of something extra, which is why I think Miles is just a great option.
Yeah. And so you've got 2 pay to flips in there, which are I guess I would argue kind of less pay to flippy ones. It's M-Crun and Deadly Meteors, which is quite scrappy. Do you have them in there for the map shape, or do you have them in there because you like pay to flips specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more of the map shape. I think with Apocalypse being the force that he is, it's a bit of a weakness, I would say, sometimes in terms of my ability, in that I can play the shape very well, but sometimes if the opponent is better at pay to flips with their team, that can be a bit of a problem. But I do think the movement that I have on a lot of my characters still makes it a pretty good strength. It's just the power generation that if you have the Pestilence Bomb and stuff like that, I've got some easy targets on my team for characters who can suffer from the poison, for example.
Yeah, interesting. So you mentioned Apocalypse a couple of times now. Obviously, this is a team event, and so we're going to try our best as a team to match people up into good matchups and bad matchups. What would you say are some of the matchups that you want to see across the table? What are the kind of things? Do you want a gunfight, just a straight up sprawl, or do you like chasing down secure teams or something like that?
I think I'm pretty confident in my team to give a lot of different affiliations a go. But I do think it has some strengths into teams like Web Warriors, where they can't hit back that hard after the all-webbed upturn. And so I feel confident in my ability both to chase them down and also have the range to catch them on the wider secures they like to play. And I have some extracts that they're not really very fond of as well. So teams who do a similar game plan to that, I think I feel pretty strong into. But I also think my team is quite balanced, so it means that I can have a good go at a lot of different teams. So I think a lot of people will kind of maybe look at the thing and look at my list and think, oh, this is just pure damage, when actually it does have some little different tricks that can mess with people.
Yeah, I think actually that's something that we've focused on in our team construction when we've been doing it, is that we have quite a balance. So yes, we'll have strengths and weaknesses, but actually we all play these lists in singles events as well, so we need to be able to come up against anything. However, as it is a team event as well, we have the restriction of characters. Do you feel there are any characters that you're lacking because of the team format, and vice versa? Are there any characters you've brought in because of the team format?
I will say, I think I've been a rock of calm in the sea of change that has been my team, where they've all flipped and flopped over various different affiliations and changed plans, whereas I, throughout the whole time, have been very crystal clear about my ambitions. And I think that has probably allowed me to lay claim to some characters over the course where, because I haven't changed, I've not kind of lost them. I didn't have Miles, for example, for Nations, and I still think that was fine because I was happy with how we did as a team, and I think it was covered in our other areas. But I definitely am really happy that I've got him back now for WTC. I also think I would have liked someone like Taskmaster potentially in place of Deadpool, because I know Deadpool is good and I'm happy to take him in games, but sometimes you can be quite limited potentially on who to pick up an extract with. And Deadpool and his 4 health basically means that if he's on that side, your opponent is very likely to grab it off him. But so he does represent a little bit of a liability in that way since the loss of exceptional healing.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So do you, if you were in singles, you'd take Taskmaster. Do you use him as a rogue agent as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've not tried it loads yet because I knew I didn't have Taskmaster for WTC, so I've just I've played Deadpool a lot and he's won me games, so it's not that I'm thinking, oh, this is bad, but more over some recent games I've kind of thought more maybe Taskmaster could be a better option. But the injured side of Deadpool I think is really strong.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that Taskmaster would be someone that people were fighting over, but that's what Teams Events brings up.
Yeah, well, it's that thing of my affiliated 3s are really strong, but not loads of depth. So, X23 Domino, obviously, really happy with. Deadpool is still great. But then after that, I think I have just Warlock left. So it's like often at 17, I want Cable and a bunch of 3s. And I'm often thinking, Deadpool is really good sometimes, but if someone's focusing on damage, it can be quite difficult for him to get the most out of his game.
Yeah, and I guess because we've got an Apocalypse player, of course, which does have some crossover. Am I right in saying Colossus is the one that is affiliated, that might have joined your roster, or did you never really consider him?
Yeah, I mean, I like Colossus a lot. I also don't have Wolverine or Psylocke. Those are all great models. I think probably Psylocke and Colossus, for me, are better in Apocalypse than they are in X-Force, even though they're both great options still to have. Wolverine, I was very sad to dropped him after he won me my last game on the singles event on the second day of Nations. But I felt that he is just kind of pulling the lever, seeing if you get 3 7s basically with how his game goes.
Yeah.
But I just wanted some different options in that 4 threat slot. So I think post WTC he's definitely going back in. So I just think he's really fun. But for WTC I thought I'll try something else.
Fair enough. And finally, so you've been on a long journey with X-Force. Is WTC the climax, or do you think you'll stick with them? How many games streak are you on now? You've been on a lot.
It's 50 plus in terms of rated games that I've gone to in terms of tournaments and stuff, which I'm really happy with, and I've had really good time with them. I think WTC will be the end of the line for it as a competitive journey in terms of trying to get the most out of them. But I definitely have some lists where I'm like, oh, I can't wait to just try this in a more fun, casual environment with a different spin on them, where it's a bit more affiliated and just some fun splashes. Because I think definitely have been feeling a little bit of the burn of always trying to squeak out the most you can out of a list, instead of thinking, actually these guys are just a lot of fun. Let's enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to that change. But I have enjoyed all my games with them. I think they're a really fun list, very dynamic. But I think post WC I will be focusing more on other stuff.
Fair enough. Well, let's give them a big send-off in the competitive sphere for WTC. Thank you, Harry, for being on, and I look forward to seeing you in Copenhagen with the Second Breakfast Club.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, you're using your made-up names.
Hello, my name's Oliver. I'm playing Convocation and Defenders, and I'm going to bring a little bit of magic to Second Breakfast Club.
Yes, welcome to Cable's Conquests, Oliver. It's great to have you. I'm really excited to hear about your Convo Defenders pivots.
Thank you so much for having me.
Why don't you read out your roster for us to start with?
Yes, so my roster is Doctor Strange, 1, Doctor Strange Sorcerer Supreme, Juggernaut, Doctor Voodoo, Shang-Chi, Clear, Iron Fist, Magic, and Cantu the Living Mummy, and Wong. My team tactics cards are Brace for Impact, Sacrifice, Ironbound Books of Shumagurath, Orb of Agamotto, Plane of Poldark, The Bar with No Doors, Mystic Ward, Do You Know Who I Am, Key Mastery, and Heroes for Hire. And my crisis are Guardian Save Shi'ar Empress in Style, Infinity Formula Goes Missing, Riot Spark over Extremis 3.0, Scientific Samples Found in Discovered Universe, Inhumans Deploy Advanced Weaponry, and the Montesi Formula Found.
Brilliant. So yeah, I love that you read the full names of the convocation cards. There's some great names in there.
They're half the reason to play Convocation is you just get to shout random spells when you played them.
Yeah, exactly. So I know you've been a Daredevil Defenders man for a long time, and you've recently made the switch. Still Defenders are there, and Convocation too. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your journey to getting this roster together for WTC?
Oh boy, I love Daredevil with all of my heart. He's my favorite Marvel character. The reason I got into this game is because I saw a Daredevil miniature and I was like, cool, I want to buy that and paint that. And then it came with rules for a game and I was like, okay, this looks fun. Leaving Daredevil Defenders behind for WTC, which I played at WTC last year, was like a really hard decision. But I just felt like the current Crisis didn't really suit the kind of game plan I wanted to play with him anymore. And I was kind of stuck in a loop that I would play with Daredevil that kind of had some success and it was great, but I just kind of felt through I was going through the motions a little bit, so I wanted to mix it up. I also feel like the Defenders roster I had with Daredevil was super greedy. I had a lot of really good characters in there and kind of at Nations as well. I felt like maybe my results didn't justify me having all these characters.
Yeah, Defenders have a stacked roster, don't they? And there's a lot of splashing going on.
Yeah, so it felt good to kind of put that to one side. And I also think that there was never really a clear split between when to play Strange and when to play Daredevil, because I was basically taking like the same 5 wide, same like 1/5 threat, 2 4s, 3 and a 2 or whatever that would be. In each game, it just depended which of the characters I would take. So it didn't really feel like I was clear when I was doing either. Whereas with this, with the Convocation side and the Doctor Strange Defender side, for me personally, there's a very clear delineation between when I play one side and when I play the other. And I think they cover each other's weaknesses really well.
Nice. Interesting. Yeah, I've been wanting to dabble with Doctor Strange after his buff. So do you think that buff really like has brought him into the limelight in quite a big way?
I wouldn't say in a big way. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, this is cute. Like Hex is cute. The more I play, the more Hex allows you to play into a specific kind of game plan the other pieces around Strange really support. And I don't think of the Hex as the Strange leadership. I think of the Hex and the buffing the dice as the Strange leadership, and you have to play to both of those. So if a hexed character is attacking a martial artist who you have buffed up with defenses, all of a sudden, like, they're maybe squeezing 1 or 2 damage through, but their spike potential is dramatically reduced, which means their power generation potential is reduced, and all this other stuff kind of compounds on them. It can be like frustrating because it also doesn't lead to a quick game either. Like, you grind out wins with Strange.
Because I guess he's not particularly like killy himself as a character.
No. And Strange's best original Strange's best trick is he activates a character. But if you activate a character, that means they're going to do another round with them because you've not killed them. So you're still going to have to deal with them later. You're just delaying the inevitable and hoping your other guys can score enough points in the meantime.
Yeah, so I guess you say you have this like duel and it's very clear delineation between the two. What side do you lean into going into WTC? Maybe in like considering your crises.
Convocation, 100% Convocation. I would like to play Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, Strange 2 every game because I love the model and I think he's really fun and his ability is super cool. But there are just bad matchups for him. So I think my crises reflect if I get on my secures, I can play Convocation. And if I get my extracts but a secure I like, I'll still play Convocation. But if I get my extracts and a secure I don't want, I'll play Strange Defenders, basically.
Right. So kind of Strange Defenders is your pivot. I guess particularly against big kaiju models that are trying to beat you up where you can kind of slow them down quite well.
Yeah, so anything like Intrusions, Wedding Party, Deadly Meteors, where I know I'm going to have to scrap. And if I'm looking at King T or Hulk, then I want those models auto-hexed and I want to be activating them with Strange or Iron Fist or Shang-Chi when he flips.
Yeah, I mean, those three seem like a great core for defenders. You're martial arts. You got the best martial artist in the game in Shang-Chi and a pretty good one in Iron Fist. But maybe we focus on Convocation then. So what's your core Convocation team? Which Convocation characters are you bringing?
So Strange and Magic pretty much every game, I think. And then depending on threat, it's either Wong or Clear. I want Wong. All my secures are 17 threat, which I kind of want to play at 17 threat. But I feel like a lot of people do anyway. So maybe that's not broadcasting a advantage. If you pick higher, I get Juggernaut. So think about that. No, yeah, I want to play Wong. And at certain threats, I can play him, Magic and Strange. And then a couple of splash models. And yeah, then my call, I love Wong. I think Wong is my most played character in any roster. Like, played Daredevil Defenders for ages, and he's always there. I played A-Force for ages, and he's always there. And so, yeah, him and Strange, I want to bring every game, basically.
Yeah, and of course, nowadays, Wong is 4/4/4 when he's next to either Strange, so he's an absolute tank for a 2-threat.
Honestly, Wong is the king of being underestimated when he stood next to Strange, because, like, he'll roll 4/4/4. Someone inevitably ends up diving Wong because they think he's an easy kill. He rolls 4/4/4, maybe push a couple through, and then I'm like, cool, Wong will do 4 dice physical, and they're like, oh yeah, haha, Wong's attacking, and I'm like, cool, 3 crits and a hit, and you hex for the next one.
Yeah. And also, I guess an attack with Wong is like equivalent to doing a meditate because he gains the power anyway. So
exactly, it's just a free meditate for me, and most of the time that's all I'm doing it for anyway. And maybe I get hex on you if I'm playing it with Defender Strange, or maybe I'm just chasing a little bit of damage. But yeah, and then I can whip a condition off somebody or faithful assistant someone else.
Yeah. And I guess the leadership is really interesting with the Convocation. So do you tend to put that on Strange, or does it depend on the game? Or do you put it on Wong?
Yeah. See, I listened to your Convocation episode, and I know you love putting it on Wong.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's going on Strange for me. I think now that Magic is here, maybe Magic's a good shout at certain times. But I really want to play Strange all the time, so mostly it's going on Strange.
And I guess, do you tend to keep it on one side, or do you start on one side and flip? And in what kind of scenario do you flip?
I keep it on the range 1 place. So I keep it on Circle of the Cosmos to start with, and then round 2 and maybe round 3 as well. And I just think the bump is so useful that switching to the reroll, you either need it to be worth it or you end up regretting it. And I think the only times I do are when I like if I'm activating Strange is going to go first and I want him to delete a model, I will flip the leadership. Normally Wong will pay for Planes of Poldark on that character, and then I basically just play a game of re-rolling all my dice until I get what I want.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 3 sources of rerolls from Strange.
Yeah. And he can re-roll skulls as well.
Yeah.
So like you do the first one and you get nothing, then you Agamotto that, and then you build up with the other re-rolls.
Yeah, and he rerolls skulls, period. It's not just on Agamotto. It's really
Exactly,
good. Yeah.
And the defensive reroll is good too. If someone is in danger but has like a 50-50 chance of surviving, I'll flip it. But if they're in danger and they have a sub 25% chance of surviving, I just don't bother.
Yeah.
Because a reroll is never as good as bumping out of range of their attacks if you can wing that.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing with the bump that's really cool is the displacement that your opponent has is limited. So if they throw you and they don't throw you quite far enough, you just bump back onto the point and happy days.
The amount of times like I've had an opponent throw one of my models into another one of my models and then they both just bump on the point is fun for me. And
yeah, I think yeah, you're that Circle of the Cosmos, that bump is a real like tax on your opponent, and I guess Convocation is not that common, so people might not know exactly how to play around it, and it is a real minefield. You've got to think about it, and then you throw in a character like Juggernaut who's on a massive base, and suddenly you hit him and he's gone.
Yeah, Juggernaut is very fun with the bump, and even the medium base models like Strange and Voodoo, they can get around pretty quick with the bump as well.
Yeah. So this is a team event, of course. Second Breakfast Club for the win. Did you feel that there were any characters that you had to omit because they were in another roster, or vice versa? Did you feel like you took some characters that might what characters were like contentious for you?
So let's start with the ones that I think I got. I think the big one was Shang-Chi. He was in my Defenders roster when I was going to play that. Shang-Chi is just good everywhere. There is no beating around the bush about how good that model is. But I felt like I really wanted Shang-Chi for kind of a few reasons. The first reason is that he's great with Original Strange and Defenders. He loves having his dice buffed. He loves hexing, stunning, and staggering people.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
If you park a 5 threat in front of Strange and he hits the stagger trigger, they're going to have such a miserable time. So he loves that side. He has great mystic attacks, which contribute to either the Moons of Munapur side of the Convocation leadership, or when I hit Plane of Poldark and then kind of Shang spenders you twice on the flip side. That's a lot of damage he can do. And finally, Shang, for like as good as he is, has a very exploitable weakness in that if you hit him from outside of range 3, especially with energy attacks, his health pool is not that big and he will die. The bump lets him either bump out of range. If you like park it so you're on range 4, he'll bump outside of that, or he'll bump into 3 and have the martial artist. Black Bolt, who is super popular at the minute, is great at killing Shang-Chi, but not when he has to chase him around the board. So I kind of have that in my favor.
Yeah, that's pretty cool actually, because I hadn't thought about it in that way, because I guess probably the difference between range 4 and range 3 is such that you can either bump into range 3 or bump out of range 4. I imagine there's not really a place in the middle where you can't escape and you can't get in.
Yeah, and this is what we're talking about with like just been attacks on people as well, because your natural instinct is to put the measuring tool down and then put yourself at the furthest possible point away, because that's just how we all play. So the leadership kind of punishes an innate like habit almost every player has, which is interesting.
Yeah, and I guess Shang-Chi is just like combining Supreme Strange and Shang-Chi means you got 2 real killers. And then you throw in Magic into the bargain, who's similarly a real killer. You've got a pretty attrition-heavy list that's also got good control with Scalpel and Shang-Chi's push, and then some of the splash characters. I do want to comment on Magic.
Yes.
She was a very late addition. Do you want to tell the listeners why?
I'm sure Curtis will have a wonderful episode where he tells you his incredible journey he's been on. But let's just say Magic for me was a free transfer on deadline day and very gratefully received. Magic's slot for a long time was Taskmaster because I needed an affiliated 3. And then when Magic, as if by magic, became available, I was like, cool, well, Magic's going to go straight back in. Because she's affiliated to both Convocation and Defenders, which is kind of the job Taskmaster was doing anyway. Yes, she is not as durable as Taskmaster, but she offers me a lot more outside of that. And I have Encantu, who is as durable and can kind of do the Taskmaster job.
Yeah, and I guess it gives you a core of 10 threat, which suddenly means you've got so much space for really nice splashes. If you're taking Strange, Wong, and Magic, that's a really nice core.
Yeah.
And I guess she plays into the Ironbound books really well.
Yeah, definitely. And like a lot of the time she'll wake up, she'll be the one who pays for playing with Podlark, and then she'll spend to somebody. Or Wong will pay for it and then she'll double spend her, which is great.
Yeah. It just gives you another threat in like over Taskmaster, where he doesn't to the same degree.
Yeah. And Taskmaster, I really enjoyed him. I thought he was great. But he spends a lot of the game picking up an extract and then running away from everybody. Yeah. Like I had a few games on Riots where he'll double move round one, pick up an extract, and then he will just double move to my back one, heal, double move to the side one, heal, double move back to my back one. Just like run away from the Hulk or the big threat, whoever. And Magic obviously has a better offensive output.
Yeah, and I guess that brings me on to something that we kind of haven't touched on. We've said about how good the list is. I've mentioned the control and the attrition, but the maneuverability of your team is really good. And I guess that's reflected in your secures, the fact that, Strange can move really fast, Magic can move really fast, Juggernaut can move really fast. You've got a lot of characters that have ways of moving themselves without doing anything.
Yeah, I really like that. I like playing like put the ball under a couple and shuffle it around kind of MCP game, which I think a lot of these guys do well. Yeah, the Obavagamotto tactic card as well allows more movement. Cleo allows more movement, even herself or somebody else. Yeah, Shang has a charge and a little advance as well. Yeah, I got a lot of maneuverable characters, which plays into the kind of game plan I want Convocation to play, which is the move around the secures and win on points.
Yeah.
And then fall back on attrition when I need to start killing guys.
Yeah. Final question for you. In terms of the team format, is there any characters that you would like in here that were in other rosters, do you think?
After Nations, I really wanted not to cling desperately to any character. Yeah. I wanted to be able to go to the team and say, you guys have what you want, and I'll, I can make do. I played around with Nick Fury in this list for a little bit, but ultimately, I don't think I needed him, and he's better served where he is. Same with Miles. I think Baron Zemo is a popular Convocation splash because he has the higher defense against Mystic for Ironbound books, and he's a really good killer. But again, he's better served where he is. I don't think I was hard done by in the character selection process at all, and I hope other people feel the same way too.
Yeah, I think actually our rosters, and hopefully as we unfold this journey that we're going on with this episode, we'll see that actually nowadays there's so many characters in the game, and there's so many good characters. If you have a diverse enough roster section, I don't think we found it that hard to build these rosters, and we weren't stepping on too many toes. There weren't too many arguments. Everyone remained very friendly with each other, which was good.
Well, we're the fellowship. That's why.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time when you play a teams thing where you can't share the characters, a lot of it boils down to who gets what 2-threat, because the 2-threats are really good at doing one specific kind of job. Like Toad does a job really well, Okoye does a job really well, and Wong does a certain kind of job really well. And then when people use those to facilitate those roles in rosters where they don't belong, that's when you can get some conflict between the rosters. But I think we all did really well at been like, this is my affiliated 2-threat. Does anybody need this? And we were like, nope, you have your affiliated 2-threat. And it worked pretty well. Yeah, I think maybe you were the only one who kind of didn't have the 2-threat you wanted, and then miraculously ended up with him anyway. So.
And miraculously I do. Yeah, so I think that I similarly, I'll go over it in my bit, but yeah, similarly, there's not been too many contentious calls, which has been really good. Well, thank you for that, Oliver. I'll stop there because I don't want to give away too many of your trade secrets because we've got a competition to win. But I look forward to hearing all about how your convocation/defenders go at WTC, and I look forward to being there every step of the way as well.
I'm so excited. Like it's such a privilege to get to do this with you guys, and I feel very, very excited. And I can't wait to get out there and win or lose, we're just going to have a good time, and that is very fun.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. And finally, thank you for being on Cable's Conquest. It's been great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I am a big fan, and I've done a couple little interviews with Curtis at different events now, but this is my first time properly on here, and I'm very grateful to be invited on.
No, it's great to have you, and good luck at WTC. I'll see you there.
Thank you very much. See you there.
Whatever happens, you win.
That's why I'm the kingpin.
Hi, my name's David Miller. I'm playing Crim's Cabal, and I am the kingpin of the Second Breakfast Club.
Yes, hello Dave. Welcome to Cable's Conquest. We're excited to have you here. Why don't you start by reading out your roster for us?
Yep, absolutely. On the kingpin side, I obviously have the main potato himself, Kingpin, then the Rhino, Black Cat, Bullseye, and Mephisto. And then on the Cabal side, we have Red Skull 1, followed by Dracula, Ultron, and Zemo. And then my main splash is Beta Ray Bill.
Nice. And do you want to just read through your tactics cards and crisis cards?
Yeah. So on the tactics cards, there'll be no surprises. I've got All According to Plan for the Crims, Cruelty, This is a Robbery, No Mercy, Warpath, Dark Reign, Cosmic Invigoration, I'm a Baron After All, and then Brace and Sacrifice.
And your crises?
Oh, yeah. The crises, on the extracts, we've got Deadly Legacy, Scientific Samples, Inhumans Deploy Advanced Weaponry, and on Secures, it's Cosmic Invasion, Riot Sparks, and Superpowered Scoundrels.
Fantastic. So you've got the Crim's core there, which is excellent, but you've also got a nice little Cabal splash. Why don't you tell me a little bit about kind of your journey to getting this roster? Because I know you went through a few iterations.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Kingpin side is solved, like you said, and then it's always the pay to flip conundrum. What do we do when we don't win priority? And there's some really, really strong contenders. And obviously you've got the Shadowland Daredevil side at the moment, which is very, very good. But I just can't gel with Shadowland Daredevil. There's just something about that character, even though arguably it is possibly better. But then a guy at my club, Peter, who I think is a superb attrition player, I've been playing this Red Skull 1 list, and he'd been playing it and going, as pure attrition, it is just beautiful. It just does so many things. The Red Skull 1 leadership, which no one really plays anymore, just synergizes so well with these big 5 threat killers, especially Mephisto, getting the extra power, being able to double beam in a single activation is amazing. And he was saying, but it's really frustrating because like there's so many matchups where I just get out scenario played, and I was just like, set a little seed in my head. So I kind of tried the Shadowland Daredevil bit. I even tried Spider Foes, probably inspired by you, because you've shown me what they can do, but I think they were too watered down playing the 50-50 split, or I wasn't getting enough reps into them, which is probably more what it was. So I started playing the Red Skull Cabal list, and I don't think it's any big secret, but, Cabal are one of the best attrition teams out there. Dark Reign just makes them so powerful, especially when you're going tall. Hopefully you daze a character, come back in the next round, Dark Reign, and take him off the board. It's just such a powerful mechanic. It just kind of gelled with me, and there's some nice crossovers between the two lists as well, kind of working for me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely working for you. You did an amazing job at the recent GT, so you're the informed player for the Second Breakfast Club at the moment. I know you say Kingpin is solved, but why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that makes Kingpin so powerful, and what pieces kind of make that such a great team?
Okay, well, for me, it's just which a lot of teams do. It's putting the problem, the mind solving on your opponent So I love the fact that Kingpin's leadership, as we know, counts as 2 on any secure. Now that they've got Mephisto, Rhino, who can just move anywhere on the board. So you're pretty much, you never know where your Kingpin player is going to put those 2 pieces. So that's such a big mind puzzle. Although Mephisto is obviously an amazing attrition piece, I think under Kingpin, you don't really have to throw an attack dice with any of these guys if that doesn't suit your style of play, because Rhino just placing off people and hopefully not doing the damage, and Mephisto placing off people with his superpower, you can just rotate anywhere on any secure, which I think is fantastic. And then with your 2 long range free threats in Black Cat and Zemo, similarly, I know Zemo is the master of attrition, but on round 1, knowing that there is nowhere it's safe on that secure board, and it's just up to you based on who you're facing, who goes where, you can outflank, outmaneuver anybody pretty much. And I just think it's such a strong opening that hopefully you go up quite significantly early on, and then it really comes down to rotating and keeping your fingers crossed and trying to stay alive.
Yeah. And I guess this kind of speed of rotation, especially with Mephisto coming in, because he's such a good rotator as well, allows you to play on those wider maps, which maybe previously he was slightly less good at, because I mean, he himself is a bit of a potato that can't move very far. And so, but now you've got 4 other characters that are incredibly mobile. And I guess the other side of the coin is, you say you don't want to do any damage, but you've got Mephisto and Zemo, where if push comes to shove, you do have like big opportunities to do big damage, which is not nothing.
Yeah, which is absolutely true. Yeah, and it's what makes the game amazing. It's just those hard decisions where you're like, I've got the best beam there, I could damage these 3 characters, but you've got to balance it against how is that investment into their power bank going to come back at you. But which is really good fun. I think what I love about Kingpin and what I hate about my Kingpin experience so far, and hate I mean whimsically, is every turn feels like a chess game. It's really good fun, and it's not normally about your activation, it's about your opponent's activation or the activation after that, which is, it's just really good fun, and been enjoying it immensely. But as a slower player, it's thank God for clock is all I can say.
Yeah, so I guess Kingpin is your main goal, to play that as much as possible, but you do have this nice Red Skull pivot, which I know you've talked about, and it's Red Skull 1, which I think is really cool, because he's been out of the game. I mean, he's been in the game since the start, but he's not really been a factor, especially since Red Skull 3 came out. But you say Mephisto's the guy that brings him back, do you think?
I think so, yeah. I mean, personally, this is not, I'm not going to be able to back this up with any brilliant intuition, but I do think we're in a bit of an era of 5 threats as well,
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
2 5-threat cores is just really strong at the moment. And that's something that I think, again, Peter from my club had highlighted, and he's a really good attrition player. The core of Mephisto, Red Skull, Ultron, and Dracula, obviously Zemo and Bullseye to make the threats work. That core is really amazing with the grunts and with Sacrifice, Mephisto's Meet My Associate, Red Skull's Hal Hydra, so he can push an attack off onto somebody else. There's actually a really nice little core there, especially on the tight close-up attrition games, where you can't attack who you want to attack. I can pretty much bounce those attacks around where I want them to go, and hopefully keep my main attrition pieces pretty healthy. Obviously, that feeds into Dracula. I've got 3 separate ways of probably fueling the best counterattack player in the game, which it's really strong. It can be brilliant.
Yeah, and not only that, is when Dracula does clap back, if he deals damage, which is highly likely, he's getting a power.
Yeah,
because of the leadership, and that's out of activation. So yeah, that's really cool. I hadn't kind of thought about that. I think it's interesting hearing about Red Skull 1 again, because I actually look at his card and I think he's got some really cool tech that we haven't seen that much like return in the game.
He really has.
And you're right, these characters are really cool, because you've not only have you got Dracula that claps back, you've got like Bullseye who you can pass an attack onto, who can then parting shot and run away. You've got Zemo who can do his counter strike. You've got lots of ways of like it's kind of the opposite of Kingpin in that you're making your opponent make difficult decisions because they're worried about how much damage you can do on their turn because you get to choose where the attack.
Exactly, yeah.
That's really cool. I like that a lot, and I think it's really interesting to see something different with Kingpin outside of something like Shadowland Daredevil, which, as you said, is the classic. We are, of course, in a team event, so you never know. Red Skull might never have to come out because we do the pairing process so well. But do you feel like, as part of the team, have you had to make many sacrifices, or have you brought in any characters that you feel are particularly relevant to a team setup?
Oh, that's a good question. I know we're in the same team and we've been through this whole process together. But I honestly don't feel like I've ever had to make a sacrifice. I don't know. I can't speak to other teams' experiences, but our team experience and our list building has been so fluid. I don't think there's been a bone of... I don't know. I feel like with every decision we've made it as a 5-list decision almost. There's never been a point where you're like, I don't think anyone has sat on that hill, if you know what I mean. No one's ever gone, oh, this is just never going to work unless I could take this. I think with the Cabal Crims split, also, it just made a lot of sense because it didn't take from anyone else's stockpile. So I don't know. I think maybe I was just really lucky that everything just gelled super well. Obviously, when I finally decided I was playing Criminals, I picked Rhino. We might have had more of a conversation if you'd picked Spider-Foe's earlier doors because he's such a great character for both lists, or any list really. And the same for Zemo. I guess I'm pretty lucky. Like, I've got Zemo, but I really love the way he plays in Criminals, and he's just an absolute winning piece in Cabal.
Yeah, I think actually in our team there's quite a good spread of characters. Like, no one's got all the best characters, and I think that has come down to the fact that we've been talking about this for a long time.
Yes,
we've been building these lists for a really long time, and there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of chopping and changing, but it's always been like communicated with the team, and I think that has made the list building process really easy. It also helps that there's loads of great characters now, so everyone can build rosters that are good from like a remaining pool of characters. You might not have, you know, the best character in the best splash in class.
Yeah, I think that's quite often the best way of finding a better splash, because sometimes the best splashes are such auto picks that you don't realise what other characters can do.
And speaking of, it's not a splash, but that leads me perfectly on to the final thing I want to raise is Ultron Metal Tyrant is in there. We've not seen him around much since Age of Ultron. What is he bringing to that roster? I know you've had a bit of a journey with him as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be totally honest. He was put in there for the Cabal side of it, and I'd seen what he could do on the Cabal side, and it was really good. Really enjoyed it. For a lot of practice, and the fact that there's a guy called Shang-Chi that seems to be in a lot of people's lists, and now that OG Strange is everywhere. I played quite a few practice games against Ollie, our teammate, and I was finding it really frustrating getting moved off points all the time by superpowers. It was a practice game for the LGT where this was happening, and it's great because it's a great puzzle to pick. And I was just looking at Ultron's card, I was like, I hadn't even considered the fact that this guy cannot be moved by enemy superpowers, which is absolutely huge. And he has a bow, which is I kind of, when it twigged in my mind, I was like, this guy's really good for Kingpin as well.
Yeah.
So the next day we played some games, and he came out 3 times, I think, and every game he was phenomenal, especially on the Fisk or the wedding party setup where he was bowing, not getting moved. Yeah, I was just really surprised what a great tech piece he is for Kingpin.
He is a prime example, I think, of people overreacting to being nerfed, because obviously he had Age of Ultron, which basically meant he couldn't die, or at least it was very difficult for him to die, and then that got banned, and so people stopped playing him because suddenly that was out of the question. But actually he's got a massive health pool, so he's quite difficult to take down. He's got a lot of really cool tech, so it's really cool to see him coming back. And you're right, he's very good against Shang-Chi because he's got his range 4 energy. He doesn't get moved.
He's phenomenal.
He's got good defenses everywhere. Yeah, that's and you've got the grunts that can just chip damage away at people. It's really cool to see that, and I think that he's a great example of some innovation that maybe wouldn't have happened outside of a team format.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, just whims. I tell you who he's not good against. Funnily enough, we had one Crim's mirror match, and I took him because I wanted him to bow characters. He didn't manage to kill Bullseye after attacking him and throwing a terrain piece. Bullseye took a full health Ultra now in one activation, which was quite something. When we're talking about mind puzzles to pick after that point, that was quite the activation. It was very funny.
Yeah, so if you're listening and you need some tips against Ultron, it sounds like just play Bullseye and you'll be fine.
Yeah, Bullseye, he is the killer.
All right, well, Dave, we won't give away any more secrets because we don't want to give anyone too many tips to beat you. But thank you so much for being on Cable's Conquest. It's been really great to have you and hear about your list. And I can't wait to see how you do at WTC.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I'm really looking forward to our journey. It's going to be awesome.
Tall walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. Not against the genius of Dr. Octopus.
Hi, I'm Archie. I'm playing Spider-Foes, and I'm the sinister scientist of the Second Breakfast Club.
Hi, Archie. Well, I was about to say welcome to Cable's Conquest, but it is in fact your conquest. So you are playing Spider-Foes on our TC team, which is really exciting for the other members of the team because this not only is one of your favourite factions, it is one that you are most competent with. Do you want to start by reading out your roster and then we can go into the details?
Let's do it. Right, so for characters we have Doc Ock, the sinister scientist himself, Mysterio, Logan the Wolverine, Kraven the Hunter, Lizard, Werewolf by Night, Abomination, Scarlet Spider, Spectacular Spider-Man, and Toad. For tactics cards, we've got Brace for Impact, Fallback, Recalibration Matrix, Instant Recovery, Survival, Sinister Traps, Surprise Webhead, Custom Upgrades, The Grand Illusion, and Strategic Retreat. And then for our secures, we have Mutant Madman, Superpowered Scoundrels, and Guardian Saves Shi'ar Empress. And for extracts, we have Scientific Samples, Struggle for the Cube, and Spider Infected.
Right, okay. So there are some notable changes from some previous Spider-Foes rosters that you've made. But before I get into that, I just want to ask you, why Spider-Foes? I know you as a player like to sort of jump around. You always seem to come back to Spider-Foes. And I know you were flirting with some other affiliations sort of in the build-up. Why was it Spider-Foes that you wanted to go with for this big event?
Yeah, I've had a bit of a journey with this one. So I took Spider-Foes earlier in the year to two big events, the London GT and the Weekender, and I did pretty well in both of them, and I was very pleased with how I did, but I was also meant that I'd taken, I think it was 3 times in a row I'd taken Spider-Foes, so I was like, look, I'm going to pause them for a bit, and I want to play something else. I want a different hobby as well, like I want to build a new affiliation. So for a long time, I'd settled on Guardians to play, which is a very different play style to what I'm used to. Lots of attrition, rolling lots of dice, lots of guns. And I was enjoying playing them, and I developed a roster. But I hadn't been to that many events, and I haven't been to any events with Guardians, just the way that the timings have worked out. I then went on holiday to France, and they just announced Prowler's new rules, and it got me really excited about Spider-Foes again. And this was maybe, a month before list lock, maybe not even that long. And I was like, you know what? I like my Guardians list, but I don't feel really confident in it. And I haven't really had that many games with it outside of playing a handful of people and only a handful of affiliations. So I thought, you know what? I'm back on the Spider-Foes hype. So I did a full circle without actually playing any tournaments with a different list. And initially, actually, the reason I wanted to pivot back to Spider-Foes was that WTC had initially said that the new models, the new Web Warriors and Prowler models would be allowed, but then because of delays with AMG, they've not been released yet, so they reneged on that. But I still felt very happy to go back to Spider-Foes, even a Prowler-less Spider-Foes, and give them one last whirl before Prowler takes over.
It's funny that you must have concocted, a handful of rosters that you were excited with. all around Prowler, all around his, his cool rule set, his new tactics cards, and then they pulled the rug from underneath you, and instead of being like, right, well, let me go back to the drawing board, you instead found Prowler alternatives. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason I keep coming back to Spider Foes is I love the models, I love the paint jobs I've done on them, and I love the story behind them. But also, I think since the new box released, and particularly all the new Team Tactics cards have been released, there's loads that you can do with it. There's so many different options, both attrition and crisis specific, that it's really exciting to build rosters. And I think you can go with like a cookie cutter roster, but you don't have to. One thing might be bearing the lead here, but one thing is that it's a big change from my previous rosters is I don't have Rhino. And this is because Dave, who's playing Criminal Syndicate, had Rhino. And I mean, Dave has been settled on Criminal Syndicate for a long time, so I couldn't just swoop in and steal one of his best pieces just because I wanted to go back to Spider Foes. But I actually decided, instead of being like, oh, well, it's not worth building a Spider Foes roster without Rhino, I was like, right, well, how can I mitigate the fact that Rhino isn't there and come up with something that I think is still effective, especially in this team format?
Yeah, no, and we've heard Dave's journey already, and he moved from Spider Foes as a pivot for his criminals into Cabal, and I suppose that then dropped a lot of Spider Foes out of his roster around the same time you were thinking about doing something else, and that just seemed perfect timing for you to sort of gather all those up. And yes, you have had to go Rhino-less. And I know he was probably one of your most played models when you were playing them at the other previous events. But I think this is, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I think this is almost what's keeping it fresh for you. You like you say, you love the story, you love the paint jobs you've done on these models. If you were to just play, Ock and Rhino and Toad plus splashes or plus whatever, in every game, it's just rinse and repeat what you've already done. But here you've had to think differently.
Yeah, and I think actually that's been a big part of it, is that when I was playing them before, I was basically just taking Ock, Lizard, Rhino, and most of the time I was playing 17, so I was taking Toad and a 4-threat. Whereas now I've had to think differently, and that's definitely what's kept it fresh and what's made me excited to play them again.
Yeah, and it's funny because you are a big fan of the Doc Ock leadership. When you are attacked, you gain power, and you can also remove. Is it Incinerate and Shock and Slow? They're the three conditions you can remove.
Yeah, they're the three.
And it's quite a good one. It requires obviously your opponent to interact with you, but it's a great power ramp. It's almost like a fair Hellfire leadership. I've heard it described as in the past. Yeah. But Spider Foes have taken a bit of a resurgence since some of the characters got rebalanced. But what we've seen a lot more of is a more punchy attrition Spider Foes. Mm-hmm. But one notable character that's not there is Carnage.
Yeah, Carnage got a bit of a buff, and I think that led to a resurgence of Green Goblin Spider Foes in particular. Look, I think Carnage has games where he can be absolutely enormous, and he can take down the world. But for me, he's a bit of a slot machine, and I don't really enjoy that, because if he does well, it can feel really bad for your opponent, because I've just dazed 4 characters and you don't have anyone to go with. And if it goes badly, I feel really bad because my 4-threat, glass cannon, misfired.
Yep.
And so I've kind of leant away from him and decided to go kind of with more 3 threats, actually, for my Spider Foes. Spider Foes are famous for their 4 threats. This is unusual for me, but I've only got 4 affiliated characters.
Yes, I was a bit surprised by that.
And 3 of them are 3 threats.
Yeah.
And at one iteration of this roster, I only had 3 affiliated characters.
And we'll come on to the character that almost didn't make the cut, which I think you would have certainly regretted. So you've got this sort of core of relatively cheap Spider Foes, and then you've got these splashes, and I assume it's the splashes that sort of lead into the game plan, which is sort of what makes you special. Let's park who's not there, and let's have a look at who is there. So when it comes to your core models, which you've got 4 affiliated characters, which 3 I suppose are coming every game.
Yeah, I essentially will take 3 affiliated every game to stay affiliated, and it's always Doc Ock because he's the leader. It's almost always Lizard because he can grab an extract and hold it pretty well.
And he just needs to be attacked once, right? And his throw is online.
Pretty much, yeah, because of that leadership. And then it's either Craven or Mysterio, who are two characters that I absolutely love playing.
Yep.
And sometimes I'll play both of them, depending on the crisis. But I think what I found was with the lack of Rhino, what I needed was a little bit more punch. Because if you don't have robbery to fall back on, you've got to get your extracts off them in a different way. And I think, so I've been leaning towards playing Craven more often than not, because he can bring that punch. He can really punch hard for a 3-threat. And then also there are some splashes which similarly add to a bit of an attrition game plan.
Definitely. I think a Craven with custom upgrades, surprise webheads, plus his own tech, he is reliably dazing models. And it's quite interesting in the team format. Most of the steals in the game, or I think all of the steals in the game, are linked to characters. So they can only appear once within the team.
Yeah, and it means it's unlikely that people are going to have multiple steals
they'll be shared around
in a roster because they need to be shared.
Absolutely. Although does our Rhino player also have Black Cats?
That's true. Yeah. We break that rule actually. That's a good point.
But yeah, I imagine that might be one of the only scenarios that's quite common with lots of criminals players getting dibs over the likes of Black Cat and Rhino. But elsewhere, like the other players, I expect them to either have no steals or just the one. So I still think the point is valid. So if they're your sort of core characters, you've got some really interesting splashes there. The first one I want to touch upon, and it's the one who immediately jumps out to me as the potential Prowler replacement, and that's Logan the Wolverine. What are your thoughts on him? What's the game plan?
So Logan is actually more of a Rhino replacement, to be honest, because they both do quite similar things in the sense that they attack and they place off the attack. Obviously, Rhino has the terrain throw, so can do a bit more damage, but Logan has really good attacks, especially if he's on his own. And because I've got two Pater flips, the kind of placing off of that works really well because you can get round the board without having to move. And similarly, Logan has the throw off his attack if, it's a superpower. And I really, really like that about him. I think I've played him a couple of times now. He was the last inclusion. But yeah, I've really enjoyed him. And he brings that attrition that I need because he can, with the leadership, if he gets dazed and he gets to go the next turn, he can do so much in his go.
Yeah.
And he's won me games in my practice games just from having one really explosive turn. And so I've been really enjoying playing him. And it gave me an excuse to buy the Weapon X bunker box, which I've been putting off for a long time.
I'm really pleased you bought that. This is an aside because you've been toying with the idea of doing a sort of a woodland / Weapon X facility themed table with snow and trees and stuff on it for some time, and obviously the terrain and the models they've never seemed to quite feature in your plan. So it feels like that plan has been pushed back and back and back. But you've bitten the bullet and you've gotten yourself your Logan. You've got your Weapon X bunker. So not only is Logan featuring in your roster, but that table of terrain is on the card. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
And another aside, I do think your paint job of Logan, which I can't believe how quickly you did between purchase and painting, I think it could be one of your best. I've said this a few times on the podcast, but obviously, it's iterative and we need to revise. I would absolutely be putting it in your top 5. I think your style has made this model sing, and it looks very, very good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful model, and I really, really enjoy it. Some models you just click with when you're painting, and he was definitely one of them.
Yeah, no, it's right. Enough ego boosting. Let's move on to your 5 threats. You've got 2 5 threats here. I don't imagine they ever come at the same time, especially if your core is likely to be 10 threat in itself.
Yeah.
I suppose they could do.
They could at 20, but
yeah.
I've not done that yet.
Do they play a similar role at threat, but on different maps? How do you compare and contrast those 2 5 threats? And for the listener, I'm talking about Abomination and Werewolf by Night.
Yeah, so Abomination has been in my Spider-Foes roster for a while, and I think he's great, and he brings a real powerhouse to the team. And I really like him on Pater flips because he can put a lot of pressure on opponents early. and he works really well with the leadership. So I think he's probably the premier 5 in there. However, I've found that there are instances, especially with the core I have now, where I still want to take a 5 threat even at lower threats, but I don't want to take Abomination. Say I'm playing against Asgard, who can just bowling ball him into my team. I don't want to be bringing this size 4 dude that's going to basically be a liability.
Sure.
And also, his movement is good because he's got a large base, medium move. But actually, if he doesn't have lots of power, he doesn't get around very well. So he wants to be kind of holding a flank. And this is where I've pivoted to Werewolf by Night sometimes. Because Werewolf by Night, he can motor. Because he's got that range 3, 6 dice attack where on a wild you place. So yes, it's not as reliable as, say, Logan. But he can do it, and he's also got a pounce, and he's on a medium base, so he's got a lot going for him. And I also really like his howl. So Werewolf by Night has a howl, which he basically rolls 4 dice, and on crits, hits, wilds, you lose power, and on skulls, I can give you slow or root. And I've found that can be really crippling to characters, particularly for the example I had, Asgard. Jane hates being rooted and slowed. And so he can do a lot of work, and he works well with the leadership because if you punch him, he's got a clap back and he's gaining extra power. And often actually his problem is power generation. So the leadership helps with that. And I really like him. I really enjoy playing with him, and he's a bit different. So I think he can catch people off guard.
Yeah, I thought he was one of the MVPs of your Midnight Suns roster, so I'm really, really pleased to see him back. It's really interesting to see how this roster has evolved from the ones that you've taken to previous events. This game is now probably the fastest it's ever been. Point scoring happens very quickly. Most games don't really go past round 4, some even ending in round 3. And like you say, if you don't have a steal to get those points back, you need to be able to pack a punch. And you don't have it in your leadership and naturally amongst your affiliated characters, you don't have high quality attack dice outside of the likes of Craven, who has his reroll, or I suppose Carnage, who can add additional dice. But there's no inbuilt rerolls, there's no dice mods. If essentially you've got a lot of damage reduction characters with some fun tricks, but they don't have that same punch. And maybe the slow attrition of tricks and traps perhaps doesn't work in the current game because of it.
Yeah, it's not close enough for that.
Yeah, it's really interesting then to see just how Werewolf by Night and Logan and Craven, even Craven, give you those options so that you can get some reliable, or at least more reliable, damage when you need it, whether it's that days. But these characters are still also bringing all the attributes that you wanted in your roster to begin with. Logan and Werewolf by Night both have their healing factor, so they can certainly last longer than some.
And you'll notice I've got instant recovery in there, which is
perfect for you with Lizard as well. So yeah, and I noticed you've got 2 pay to flips, but you've also got Scoundrels. I mean, the pay to flip plan, is piecing together quite well here. You've got a lot of characters that can place from their attacks or with additional movement that can take advantage of jumping around the board on those pay to flips. But Scoundrels, rather than going for a third pay to flip, you've gone for Scoundrels. Do you rate yourself on Scoundrels?
Yeah, so I've considered Emkran, but I think it's a bit close for me. Yes, I do have better attrition now, but it's still quite tight, and I can do it. I can do it reasonably well, but I love Scoundrels with this list, and the reason is because I've got my boy Scarlet Spider in there. What I've found is that this roster has an enormous amount of displacement, and Scarlet Spider really makes that sing. And so on Scoundrels, I have very good ways of displacing people off points and winning the game through that. And so I pivot away from this kind of mobile list with Logan or Werewolf or Abomination, and I come back to Scarlet Spider and really focus down on the displacement side of the game. And I found it works very well.
Yeah, it's quite frightening, the amount of displacement. I had a practice game against this on Scoundrels when I was playing with one of my first early plans of my roster. And I was a little bit blindsided by just the level of displacement, because you can go, you have the option to go 6 wide at 20 threats. You can really force through the fact that you get that last activation, but you can also go 5 wide if you expect your opponent to also do that. And you still have ways of manipulating your opponent to minimize their action compression. And Scarlet Spider is such an important piece of that. I think he's a highly underrated character in the game, and he's a bit of a scoundrels expert.
Yeah.
Are you also playing into the fact lots of teams don't like scoundrels? I think, Kingpin Criminals has become such a fiend on scoundrels that a lot of teams are trying to avoid playing it, just in case they come up against Kingpin. Do you relish the opportunity to play Kingpin on his home turf, or is that a matchup you're looking to avoid?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people don't like scoundrels generally because of Kingpin, but I think that I want to play against Kingpin on scoundrels. Give that to me. I'll take it on and see how we go. Because of that displacement, they count as double, but they don't count as double if they're not on the point.
No, that's so true. Well, I'm very excited to see how this roster plays. I'm very pleased to see you back on Spider Foes. It's only a bonus to our team. Do you have any sort of closing remarks?
Yeah, I think one thing is that the team element of this has been really interesting. I've talked a lot about Rhino's absence and how that really sculpted the list. For a long time, I also didn't have a Toad in there for reasons that we'll come on to in your roster building section, but I was then able to sneak him in at the last minute, and I'm very pleased about that because I think he works very well with the leadership. I think his nerf that he had, where he's lost that pip of health on his healthy side, is far less impactful against my roster, because if you do any damage to him because of the leadership, he can slippery.
Yep.
Which I've found catches people off. They'll throw in a kind of rubbish attack hoping to just do 1 pip of damage, and then he'll slippery away and he'll hold an extract for the game.
Do you still like to play him at 17?
Yes, if I want to take a 5 threat. So it really depends. If I want to take a 5 threat, I can go my core of 10. I can take a 5 threat and I take Toad. And you gain output from your 5 threat and you lose output from Toad because he's just running around with an extract.
Yeah. Oh, well, brilliant. Well, good luck. The whole team is rooting for you. It's certainly one of our star performers, one of our higher ranked players. So
no pressure.
No pressure. Well, as your captain, I'm putting all the pressure on your shoulders.
Thanks.
I'm delegating it to you. But yes, and we look forward to hearing how you get on over in Copenhagen.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome.
Wakanda forever!
Hi, I'm Curtis. I'm playing Wakanda, and I'm carrying the mantle of captain on the second Breakfast Club.
Oh, captain, my captain indeed. I'm very excited to have you. You're the last in our roster building. We've saved the best till last, the cream of the crop, El Capitano himself. Wakanda, why don't you read us your list?
So I have M'Baku, King T'Challa, Killmonger, Shuri, Okoye, Hulk, Red Skull, Master of Hydra, Psylocke, Luke Cage, and Nebula. My team tactics cards are Wakanda Forever, Spirit of Wakanda, Vibranium Shielding, Wisdom of the Ancestors, Usurp the Throne, Cosmic Obliteration, Heroes for Hire, Survival, Brace for Impact, and Sacrifice. My secures are Deadline to Destruction, Mayor Fisk, and Macron. And then my extracts are Deadly Legacy Virus, Inhumans Deployed Advanced Weaponry, and Scientific Samples.
Excellent. So, before we go into detail about your roster, you've been on a bit of a journey, and you similarly went on a bit of a journey with me, because this was a roster you took to Nations and you did very well with. So, how have you ended up playing Wakanda at WTC?
Yes, well, Nations, I absolutely love Nations, and I was really, really pleased with how I did. So obviously we had the team event and then the singles event, and wily listeners will see a lot of the similarity between this roster and the roster that I took to the singles, but with a handful of differences from the one I took to the teams. And teams event, like the singles, I felt like I did very well, but I felt perhaps we made some errors in the pairing process, and actually some of my pieces in that Wakanda roster might be better served in other people's rosters, and there was some models in other people's rosters that I thought, would really bring the best out of my Wakanda roster, but I couldn't take. So, and also I felt like we never really had an answer to the big meta baddies. the way I resolved this in my thinking process was right. I'm just going to play one of those big meta baddies. Then at least we've got one of them. We present that same challenge to other teams that was presented to us. So I opted to play Servants of Apocalypse. I went to several singles events, and in fact, there's an episode coming out shortly after our WTC coverage on one of those events where I talk quite a lot about the fact I'm practicing for WTC.
So that'll be outdated nicely.
Yeah, that didn't age well at all, and it's going well. I'm doing quite well at these events. I mean, why wouldn't you? I'm playing one of the strongest factions out there. There are some sticky situations. When I come up against top players who have played it against and with Apocalypse hundreds of times, then that I'm coming a little bit unstuck. But on the whole, I'm doing quite well, and I'm building my own confidence in the roster and for the team. But came up against a bit of a wall, and that wall was it, it didn't feel very Second Breakfast Club for me to just copy and paste the Apocalypse roster that practically everyone else is taking. There was some subtle room for creativity in your 10th character, i.e. the character that will probably never see the table, and maybe a little bit in your crisis selection. But ultimately, I never really felt like this was my roster, and I never really felt like I had come on a journey with it and discovered anything and tweaked it my way. And while I was playing lots of Apocalypse, you were going on your journey. You were discovering Guardians of the Galaxy, and then discovering what you did like them about, and what you didn't like, and then before moving back to Spider Foes. At the same time, Oliver, who we've heard from, he made a sort of a transition from his Daredevil defenders into his Convocation defenders that he's got now. I really felt like he was building a roster that was his own, and Dave had a similar journey where he discovered his Cabal pivot, and Harry is just Mr. X Force. He keeps defying what anyone else says to him, and then he's playing X Force, and he's playing X Force very well.
Yeah, it's ironic that Harry has been the most stable of the lot of us.
Yes, he is. Yeah, certainly considering sort of the fire that the Cable and X Force comes under, but he's stuck to his guns, and he stuck to his guns well. But you guys were really exploring something and really enjoying that journey, and I was sort of felt like a bit of a spectator to that, and I didn't feel as passionate about Servants of the Apocalypse. Don't get me wrong, it's got all my favorite characters in it. Once it was released, I was very excited to play it, painted him up very, very quickly, and I have enjoyed playing him, enjoyed getting him on the table. The likes of Beast, Colossus, the Blob. These are all characters that I love to see on the table, and they absolutely sing in that affiliation. But they're singing for everyone, they're not just singing for me. And it was after a couple of heavy losses from my teammates, including yourself, where I learned from those losses, and I think I could have put things right and played better, and maybe even come out with wins in those games. But I didn't have the same enthusiasm to do so. It wasn't my roster. So I came back to Wakanda, something I really enjoyed playing at Nations. And yes, it's not the most innovative, and obviously a lot of players are playing it the same way. But the way I felt like I discovered Wakanda and I played with it definitely felt like a journey I'd been on myself, not one I was copying from others.
I think there's two aspects. I think for you, Servants of Apocalypse, probably the problem is that so many people play it, and therefore you naturally, Thran, say, no, I don't want to play it. But also, I guess, yeah, like you say, you've been on a journey with Wakanda in a way that you probably haven't with Apocalypse.
Correct.
And so, yes, maybe the journey hasn't been up to WTC, but it was still something you've done. And as it turned out, it worked really well for the team. Why don't you say a little bit about the roster and how easy was it to put together, knowing that we'd locked ours in? Because you changed about a week before deadline day, I should say.
Literally a week before deadline. It was very late. A few late night messages, and you lot were like, "Well, do you want to sleep on it before you do this?" And I'm glad you did, because I woke up feeling even more sure of myself that I wanted to switch the next morning. So I never thought I'd be able to play Wakanda, because one of the key pieces for that attack redirection that I've talked at length about is Luke Cage. He fits really, really nicely at certain threat levels, but also you can lean into him. He can get onto the midline, hear us Bahak, and then move him around the table. It keeps your King T alive. It keeps your Red Skull alive. So Luke Cage was a big, important part of that. at Nations, he was part of the Defenders roster because he's also a very, very important part of Daredevil's Defenders. So with Oliver moving off that Daredevil game plan, Luke Cage dropped out of his plans. In fact, I think Iron Fist joined his plans.
Yeah.
So it that freed it up. So suddenly, that's a bit of a light bulb moment. But I also think me dropping Servants of the Apocalypse probably benefited the team in other ways, not just myself, but I mean, it freed up Toad for you. It's freed up Magic for Oliver. I don't know if it's freed up any other characters. I know there's several X-Force characters that I know Harry had his eyes on. I don't think he's opted to choose them.
No, I to be honest, I think the big one was Magic. Like, I think Magic going into Convocation really elevates that roster.
Definitely.
And conversely, there's not really anything that we wanted in this Wakanda roster. Like we said, we'd already put in our roster by the time you had this light bulb moment. So you literally were able to pick from the rest of the characters. And what did you pick? You picked essentially your singles Wakanda roster.
Yes. Yeah. There's one character change from that singles roster, and this is where I have perhaps lent more into the meta and a little bit less of me. But in that Nations singles roster, I had Gladiator as my 6th threat option, whereas this time round I've gone for Hulk. I think Hulk is the sensible choice. He can not only play attrition, he can play control. He really likes my crises, probably more so than Gladiator does, and he's a lot less of just a fistful of dice and hope for the best like Gladiator is, and he solves a couple of difficulties I have at certain threat levels at getting my 2/5 threats in.
Yeah.
He essentially can come in for Red Skull and be that 6th threat. So yes, the fact that he was available as well, again, another casualty of Oliver leaving Daredevil Defenders, sort of freed him up for me. And yeah, I couldn't believe it. The rest of the characters were all available. I couldn't believe, I honestly think King T'Challa is probably one of the few broken models in the game. The fact that he wasn't picked by anyone else, really, he's essential in Wakanda. So that was really, really good. Okoye, 2 threats are a premium in the team's format because there aren't so many of them. And she's one that's really useful in certain affiliations, certainly ones that benefit from using superpowers or that need to keep certain pieces alive. But she was available. And similar Shuri as well. Shuri can work in lots of teams. So the fact that she was available too was a real bonus.
Yeah, I think on your point to King T, he is probably the reason he's not played more is because it's such an expensive box.
Yeah, he sits behind that £90 piece of terrain
that is useless on the table. So I guess from our perspective, we all like to play our own characters. I think we all were trying to build our own rosters based on what we had or what we felt we could buy rather than. So I think that's probably why he's not seen, and he's not seen more like widely outside of Wakanda elsewhere as well. So you're building around King T, right? So tell us a little bit about your core.
Yeah, so my game plan, as in plan A, would be to be playing M'Baku, King T'Challa, and Okoye every game, and that is an 11 threat core. It means at 16 threat, I can bring my other sort of favorite piece for this roster in Red Skull. 17 threats. Now with Hulk, I can upgrade Red Skull to Hulk, or I can drop Red Skull and bring in 2/3 threats. And actually, my 17 threat extract is one that I would absolutely do that. So bringing in Shuri and Luke Cage into that slot would absolutely be the option.
Yeah.
But I've got flexibility, and then from there, from that 11 threat core, plus trying to play Red Skull as often as possible, I can scale up. At 18 threat, particularly if I don't have priority and I want to punish my opponent for hitting the midline, then adding Nebula to that 16 threat is really, really powerful. If I do have priority and it's likely that I'm going to be the first character on the midline, then I'm probably less likely to play Nebula, and I'm more likely to try and make sure I can get Luke Cage on the table. And then similar 19 threat, well, it's my 16 threat plus Luke Cage or Shuri, depending on what the map looks like. And at 20 threat, well, then I can bring one of my 2/4 threats. Psylocke, who I quite like in this roster. I mean, she's got amazing damage output anyway. She really converts power into damage with her own rerolls really well. And then the leadership just gives her that extra extra ability to push damage through. And she's a mystic option.
Yeah.
She's my only mystic option.
I think that's a really key part of her kit.
Yeah.
Is there's a lot of mystic weakness, and so if you see that, for example, my roster, if I bring Logan, you bring Psylocke,
Yeah.
I'm a bit scared in that matchup.
Definitely, yeah. I think if I was to face you, I think Psylocke almost, and I'd even consider her at other threats. But certainly, we draw scoundrels, and I'm very confident bringing Psylocke. Even if you didn't bring Logan, the fact that she can choose between energy and mystic makes her really flexible.
Yeah.
And most of these tough, tanky characters, they've all got high physical defense. Like a lot of characters do in this game. So she's hopefully exploiting a character's weak point, which I really, really like at her. But if I don't need that, I do have Killmonger.
I was going to say, you've had a bit of a kind of up and down relationship with Killmonger. How's he ended up in the roster? Because he was very nearly dropped, I think, at Nations.
He was, yeah, after Nations. I didn't play him once. And in fact, I never thought about playing him once. And he is here because, well, he can be an incredibly effective attrition piece in the fact that he can do high amounts of damage. He is an excellent character to be playing Wakanda Forever with. He's got an energy attack with a pierce. Energy is the worst represented defense dice with Usurp the Throne. And you've got a lot of big high threat leaders in the likes of Black Bolt. He's going to be the highest threat character on the game, on the table, and Apocalypse as well. I think he's probably a good model to distract. I think distract is the best term. I think obviously those Apocalypse and Black Bolt are probably better at taking Killmonger out than he is at them, but they have to deal with him because otherwise, not only can he take them out, he can harvest some VPs from them as well. So he's there as an option into those big bads. But if I'm honest, if I'm already affiliated, it's probably Psylocke.
Yeah, fair enough. I think Psylocke is an all-round better character. However, I think you make a good point. Those two big threat models, 6 and 5 threat, they're not the tankiest. Nope. Especially, Black Bolt on his healthy side, he's only got, 6 health. Okay, when he flips, he's got more. But for that Usurp the Throne, I feel like you can play that game. And as you say, they have to deal with Killmonger. If they don't deal with Killmonger, him being able to triple tap someone with Wakanda Forever and Usurp the Throne suddenly means that those big scary models will go down, and those two VP can be absolutely clutch in the right moment. And if they're distracted by Killmonger, they're not killing King T.
Definitely, and that's ultimately why I think Killmonger is a piece that I should have perhaps brought against someone like Apocalypse in the past, because he needs to deal with Killmonger, and if he's dealing with Killmonger, he's not dealing with the likes of King T and M'Baku. He's very good at taking out M'Baku because he can exploit that weak energy defense, and he can also put some nasty conditions on him. But if he's got to deal with Killmonger, if he lets Killmonger have an activation with Wakanda Forever, I think it's very likely Killmonger does 7 damage to Apocalypse. I know Apocalypse, obviously he's got the healing every time he's attacked, but that means, I need to do 9 damage to him over 3 attacks, because obviously the one that dazes him won't get healed. And I think when you're rolling 7 dice, then 7 dice, that's 7 dice, then 9 dice, then 9 dice, it's probably quite likely that happens, especially when you've got a Pierce and the leadership as well.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a fun roster for you, and I think you've done well with it. So, I mean, we've all got rosters that we have a bit of a history with and that we're feeling good about. So I think that's positive. And also, I'm quite pleased that we have not got an APOC or an Inhumans roster now. I think that feels, in line with the Second Breakfast Club mantras.
Definitely. There was a lot of the team being a bit overjoyed, I think, when I made the decision to move from Apocalypse, which is probably the opposite to most teams. They're desperate to make sure they've got an Apocalypse player, they've got an Inhumans player, but that's really not what we're about. We want people playing what they're comfortable with, what they enjoy playing with, and what they're going to be passionate with. Hopefully, those players playing that way are going to be making better decisions, and ultimately that's what's going to win you games of MCP.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, we won't give away any more of your trade secrets, and we'll stop there. But thanks for giving us that insight, and hope it's interesting to people. Let's pause there now that we've heard from all of the team, and let's do a quick outro. So we've heard from all the team. We're WTC ready. We're very excited to head to Copenhagen in 2 weeks, not even 10 days from now. How do you feel, Captain? Now that you've heard about our team.
Well, listening to everyone sort of go through their team, it's filled me with confidence. Probably, perhaps misplaced. Obviously, every team is going to be going in well practiced, well versed with their rosters. But I feel like we've got 5 players who are very confident with what they're using. They're very familiar with what they're using, and really passionate with what they're using as well. So for me, that's just, you're more likely to make good decisions at the tabletop because of it, and hopefully that's what's going to sort of give us an edge. I also don't think we're a easy opponent, on the basis that most teams are going to be planning, right, who do we pair into Inhumans, right, who do we play into Servants of Apocalypse. Of those top sides, we've got criminals. That I know criminals feature in, I think in they're either the third or fourth most common team. But our criminals team isn't, as conventional as others, because of the Red Skull pivot that Dave has got. So yeah, I think teams are going to have a hard time trying to sort of pair into us. So yeah, I'm quietly confident.
Yeah, it should be good, and we're underway doing our homework. We're doing a traffic light system against affiliations and against now that all the rosters have been released, we can see that. So we're going to do our homework and try and do our best. I think we're all looking forward mainly to just going over there, getting a bunch of games with rosters we really enjoy, and see what happens. At the end of the day, we only need to win 3 games each round. That's all we need to do. That was the mistake made at Nations. You went 5-0 round 1. You overachieved. So we've got to make sure that we just hit that right balance.
We need to maintain efficiency for sure.
Exactly.
And it's what's quite nice about the Second Breakfast Club, and we didn't mention this at the start. Even when we've gone to singles events together, we do get excited by each other's wins. We get excited by each other's games, and it's really nice now at a teams event that those actually matter. And so we can all just get, you're not just caring about what happens at your table. You really care about what happens at everyone else's. So it doesn't matter if you lose, because hopefully someone else in your team has managed to pull out that win, or that unlikely moment that you can really get behind and celebrate.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good team environment, and I'm very excited to get there and start rolling some dice.
Absolutely.
Before we finish, I do want to plug something of my own. After WTC, the dust settles. We're all in the depths of winter here in the UK and looking for things to do. I'm running my first MCP event. Listeners may know I've moved out of London to Southampton, and I've been trying to build kind of a group of players, and so I've finally found a good venue for it. It's at Entoyment in Poole, which is very near Bournemouth, right next to Bournemouth, and it will be on the 13th of December. So it's called Crisis on the Coast, and I'm very excited. A one-dayer. Come and get your toys out before Christmas, roll some dice, and it should be a great time.
Absolutely. I've got my ticket, so I will be conquesting to the South Coast, and really, really looking forward to it.
Exactly.
I think it's a really nice sort of cleanser as well post WTC to try something completely different. I've already been cooking roster ideas for that event, and we'll be trying something completely new. So great opportunity for the people to come along and do the same.
Yeah, it'll be great. And Entoyment, the store it's in is an absolutely fantastic store. Loads of table space, loads of plastic on sale on the shelves, which I love. So yeah, get yourself down there. It'd be great to have you. And with that, why don't we conclude? Curtis, where can people find you?
You can check me out on Instagram and see all my models painted. I'm simple_edge highlights. Or if you want to sort of follow my progress at these events, you can see my handle on Longshanks is Curtis H. And if you want to drop me a message, you can find me on Discord. Happy to chat anything MCP, anything about, Wakanda, WTC, even Crisis on the Coast and what you might be thinking to take down there. I'm just Curtis on Discord. How about yourself, Archie? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm also on Instagram at Smeagol's Corner. I've been trying to put some of my latest models up. And then I'm also on Discord as Archie_RC and on Longshanks as Archie Cable. So yeah, please reach out. Anything MCP related, if you have any feedback for the podcast, and especially if you're interested in coming to Crisis on the Coast, hit me up. We'll sort you out some tickets. And yeah, it'll be great to communicate with the community. But – without further ado, until next time, keep up the conquest.
Conquest.
The name's Cable. Remember it.